Hi, I'm sorry for being late.
Hey, welcome back.
Hello.
Sorry, I had my ADS round with Cal pushed.
That's all good. I have my camera on, but apparently it's not working. Can you all hear me? Okay. All right, so welcome and congratulations on breaking in IPDA. I'm just confirming that we have all three of the correct judges here. We've got Clayton, Victoria, and myself. I'm Tori. All right, and we've got San Jose, Pranav Chilapagari on the affirmative, and
Yes.
Amy Chang from CCSF on the negative.
Yep.
All right, great. Do you all have any questions for us before we do topic strikes?
Yeah. So it's IPDA, right? So do you guys judge IPDA as more like a debate thing or more like a speech thing?
I'll go first. I personally see IPDA as different from other forms of debate like Parley. So I'm looking for this to be kind of like a classic IPDA, I guess, where it's more conversational and accessible to lay audiences who might not be familiar with jargon or procedurals. Would the other judges like to answer?
Yeah, I have, this is the first IPDA round I've ever judged. I'm like layperson as layperson gets. So I'm anticipating this to be like kind of what Tori said, sort of conversational and not super technical. I think, very layperson for sure.
Yeah, in addition, another layperson here. So I'm also looking for a conversational kind of dialogue, straightforward arguments presented in a fairly simple manner, clear manner, and that's what I'll be looking for in this round.
Cool.
All right, then are both debaters ready to strike topics?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and paste these into the chat.
Actually, are we starting time when we see the topics or after we strike?
Time will start after the first topic has been struck. So right after the negative strikes the first one, then the time starts.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and paste them in.
I'm gonna strike one.
All right, and I'm gonna go ahead and start my timer.
I'm gonna strike 5.
I'll strike 2.
Okay, I'm gonna strike 4.
Okay.
All right, that means that our resolution in this round is number 3. Ebooks are better than physical books. I'll see you all back here in about 29.5 minutes.
See ya.
All right, folks, that is the end of prep. Welcome back. All right, do we have both judges back? All right, great. That means we are ready to get started with our first affirmative speech, not to exceed 5 minutes, whenever you're ready.
All right, is anybody not ready? Okay, time starts now. First, I would like to thank my opponent and my judges for being here. This is my first time competing, and I really enjoyed the event, and I think I'm going to stick with it. So first, let's begin with the resolution. I affirm the resolution resolved. Ebooks are better than physical books. First, I want to start with some resolution analysis, which means I'm going to clear up some definitions and how I think you, the judges, should evaluate the round today. First, I want to define ebooks as per the Merriam-Webster is defined as books that are composed and or converted to a digital format. I want to define better from Merriam-Webster as more advantageous or effective. I want to specify that in order for something to be more advantageous or effective, I think we should evaluate this lens to see which one between ebooks and physical books are more accessible to those who are marginalized. Because if there's a lack of accessibility to one or both of these products, then you're not able to really testify which one is better on an equal frame. So I think whichever one is more accessible is more better because you can better evaluate what is better. On to my first contention or my first point, ebooks help those who have disabilities. The Good Reader writes in 2017 that those with motor difficulties might have it difficult to turn the page of a book, and those with print and eyesight deficiencies might need to magnify the text of what they are reading. Ebooks allows them to do so. By actually having ebooks, you're able to flip through pages through just a tap, and you're able to magnify text through an option that a lot of ebooks tend to have. Because of this, we're allowing those with motor and eyesight deficiencies to have equal access to reading and being able to have equal access to any other educational resources. It's why you see those people who do have motor difficulties have a tablet in front of them when they're in a school setting, because it helps them to access different types of books and different types of textbooks. It's why it is better, because it is more accessible to those who are disabled. Furthermore, the American Language Association further says that because ebooks have a text-to-voice option, it's better suited for those who are blind, those who are dyslexic, and those who have ADHD, because they cannot really sit still and hold a book and really look at it, especially with those with ADHD and dyslexia. By actually having ebooks have a text-to-voice option, you're able to get both. You're able to have both a auditory option for those who are blind, but for those who are dyslexic and have ADHD, you're able to get more of a visual and auditory experience with it, which helps increases concentration for those who have ADHD, and counteracts the reading proportion that harms those with dyslexia. My second point for today's debate is that it is cheaper in the long run. No one just buys one book for the rest of their life. The Pew Research Center found that ebooks are significantly cheaper than print counterparts, costing on average $5 to $10 when you buy it from places like Amazon or when you buy from places like Amazon or when you buy it from places like the Kindle market. Furthermore, the Tech Radar writes the cheapest device for a tablet would be around $50, which is an expense, but is an expense you can invest in for cheaper books in the long run. This helps those who are in lower socioeconomic standpoints, because through things like libraries this is the Washington Post evidence, which they wrote 2 weeks ago. Those in places with those with poor socioeconomic classes have libraries that don't have the exact same resources to access different types of books and different types of reading material. They're forced to buy those physical books probably online, physical books at a more expensive price. Furthermore, even though libraries might be able to downturn the prices by having it free, things like late fee increases will end up racking up, especially if you do have cognitive and motor disabilities, or if you have ADHD to the point where your short-term memory does kick in and you probably forget about the books that you have. This is why investing in things like a Kindle or any other types of ebook device is better for long-term sustainability, and it's also better for long-term so you're not incurring large costs when you need to buy a book. This is especially true with college textbooks. They're freaking expensive, and everybody has to buy a college textbook. But ebooks are always significantly cheaper than the college textbook you might need to buy. Furthermore, before just to summarize basically what I said in this debate, I affirm and I do believe that better should talk about things like accessibility. I talk about accessibility by talking about how ebooks are better with those with disabilities, and ebooks are better in the long run in terms of cost and currencies. For these reasons, I think it is imperative that we vote affirmative. Thank you.
All right, 2 minutes for cross-examination.
Of course.
Okay, so could you please read again your definition for better?
More advantageous or effective.
Okay, let me just write that down. Or effective. So your first contention is about disability, right? And you talked about text-to-voice books. Wouldn't you agree that those are audiobooks, not books?
So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I was excited to answer the question. For ebooks, the fact that so the difference between ebooks and audiobooks is audiobooks, there's no text function on them, right? Audiobooks don't have text, but for things like ebooks, they have text. Because of that, there's in a lot of different types of ebooks, like a Kindle, per se, they have a voice to text function.
Okay.
Right? That's the main difference.
So it's not like you're not talking about only audiobooks, you're talking about ebooks that come with audiobooks.
I mean, most ebooks have it. I mean, basically all ebooks have like a text to voice function on them. Like,
okay.
Yeah.
So your next question is about books being cheaper in the long run. And you said that, so you're basically saying that if you buy a Kindle and then you continue buying ebooks, you'll end up spending less money than if you buy multiple like print books. Is that what you're saying?
For sure.
Okay, great. Do you know like how many ebooks we would end up having to buy to actually make up the difference?
I mean, ebooks already are $5 to $10 cheaper according to the Pew Research Center. So considering a cheaper ebook would be like what the cheapest the cheapest ebook would be 50. It would be like 5 to 10.
Okay.
And especially because of things like textbooks are like significantly more expensive. Like there's probably like more of it cheaper.
I mean, do you read your college textbooks on an e-reader? Because I'm pretty sure I don't.
I mean, I read all my college textbooks online.
On a Kindle? Really?
I have my, for sure.
That was just surprising. Okay, well, 2 minutes is up. So I'm looking at starting with top of case and then moving on to negation. And we're probably going to have about 3, and then I'll move on to aft contentions. Okay. And this is 6 minutes, right?
Correct.
Okay. Starting time now. So the first thing I like to talk about is the Merriam-Webster definition that you had for ebooks. You actually cut out part of the definition. I have it pulled up right here. The definition of an ebook is a book composed in or converted to digital format for display on a computer screen or handheld device. This means that audiobooks are not part of ebooks. You kind of only read the first part of the definition and didn't read the second part. So I just like to add that in. Next, you talked about the definition of better and how your definition of better is more advantageous or effective. Somehow you managed to interpret this as being more accessible, but I don't really agree with that definition. I think that we should rather be evaluating whether physical books or ebooks are more advantageous or effective as per the definition that you provided. And so it has to be an overall kind of evaluation here. Moving on to the first contention from the negation. The first contention is forced labor. So Malaysia is one of the hubs of global economic electronic industry, and it sends billions of dollars in electronic parts to America, China, Japan, etc. You're right, a supply chain manufacturing or monitoring organization found that 28% of laborers in Malaysia are in forced labor conditions, while another 46% are on the verge of being in a forced labor condition. We can also talk about China's Foxconn, which is one of the largest private employers in China, who specifically uses forced labor to directly supply Amazon to make their Kindles. This means that if you're supporting electronic ebooks and buying Kindles or other e-readers, there's nearly 100% chance that a component in your e-reader or other device is made from one of these, from either Malaysia or China using forced labor. However, I was unable to find a single source that traced paper books into forced labor. This means that paper books are significantly more ethical to consume than ebooks are. What this basically means is that the rise of the ebook industry promotes people to buy more e-readers or other devices, making forced labor more profitable. This means that these companies are going to be engaging in even more forced labor and having more people working in their factories and such as that. And so focus here is really more on the medium through which ebooks are consumed and than the medium through which paper books are consumed. Basically, the medium that you have to actually use to consume the ebooks is inherently unethical. And by promoting ebooks, we're making an inherently unethical decision. That's why ebooks are worse than physical books. Moving on to the second contention. The second contention is about writers. Traditionally, the author-publisher relationship is about 50-50 split on the profits, basically even. But with ebooks, the rate actually hovers at only around 10% for authors. Authors only get around 10% of the profits, while publishers are getting more like 90% of the profits. This started in 2004 when Random House cut their rates in anticipation of a boom in the ebook market. By 2010, it was basically set in stone, and authors are making significantly less money through ebooks than they would through a paper book. Each ebook sold brings sizable losses to the author, because if you buy an ebook, you're not buying the physical book. Authors continue to make less and less money throughout the years as more and more people buy ebooks. This results in an undersupply in the market. You just can't make a living as an author anymore, unless you're like really, really famous. This means that we see less and less great books, and less people are able to pursue their dream as an author. So if you want to support your favorite author, you have to buy a physical book instead of the ebook. Because this is why physical books are better, because they support the people that are actually writing the books. Moving on to my third contention, which is that people just like paper books better. There's not a single source or there's not a single survey out there that will tell you that the majority of people like ebooks. For example, I have a few surveys here. An NBC survey said that 92% of students actually prefer paper books for studying or paper textbooks for studying because they simply study better out of paper books. Secondly, the Pew Research Center says that print books are still the most popular type of book. Thirdly, CNBC says that print books still outsell ebooks despite the fact that there's a rising ebook market. And people have a good reason to like print books better. For example, a study from The Guardian said that people using ebooks are more likely to recall information. Or you can also say that people who are using physical books have less eye strain. But some things are kind of more personal. It's just like print books smell better, or they feel better. They're a reminder of a more peaceful time, especially in the kind of hectic world that we live in. People just aren't ready to give up the kind of feeling of having a physical book in their hands. Basically, people in general just like physical books, and that's what makes them better, because, well, people just prefer them. Moving on to the affirmative contentions. The first contention was that ebooks are better for people with disabilities. While I agree that ebooks can be better for people with some disabilities, you have to consider the magnitude. There is a significantly larger proportion of the population that prefer print books to ebooks. And when you're considering better, you have to think about whether it's better for the majority of people. I do agree that people with disabilities would probably be better off using ebooks, but you still have to consider the majority. So if this resolution was, for example, are ebooks better than physical books for people with disabilities, then I would agree. But the resolution is simply not that. Then you talked about text to voice. Again, this is not exactly an ebook. It's an audiobook, and it's not covered by your very own definition that you provided from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. So you can't really consider that. Nextly, you talked about how ebooks are cheaper in the long run. I'm going to fundamentally disagree with this. Ebooks are not actually cheaper in the long run because of the issue of reselling. When you buy an ebook, you're not actually going to own the book. You own the right to read that book on your device. So you are unable to legally resell that book. This is the same reason why if I go on Amazon and buy like the entire Harry Potter series, I looked it up, it's $86. But if you buy the entire Harry Potter series on eBay, it's only around $20. So when you consider the fact that you can buy used paper books, but you cannot buy used ebooks, that means that paper books are significantly cheaper in the long run. So to summarize, the reasons why you should prefer the negation is because, well, number one, ebooks promote forced labor. Number two, ebooks are worse for writers and do not pay writers fairly. And number three, people just like physical books better, and it's just a fact. Thank you.
Okay, Amy, ready for the 2 minutes?
Yep.
All right, time starts now. All right, can you just real quick again explain the part of the definition that I supposedly left off?
Right, so I'm reading it off of here right now. A book composed in or converted to digital format for display on a computer screen or handheld device. When you read it, you just said a book composed in or converted to a digital format.
Okay, but on a handheld or a computer device, correct?
For display on a computer screen or handheld device.
Or display on a computer. So
Right.
It's the part that it says for display that you think does not really apply. Or it's a part that it only specifies for display, but apparently because there's the text to voice, it's not only to display that you disagree
I
with.
don't think it's important to read the entire definition.
Right, but do you disagree with but do you think that an ebook that has text to voice is suddenly becoming an audiobook?
No, the text part, the display
So,
part is
so
an ebook, but
do I, if I,
option.
I guess like if I
The
concede
bookmark
your,
is part of the book.
right, Amy, if I concede that your definition is right, do I lose any of the points coming from the affirmative?
Well, I mean, you lose the part about the text to voice books, but it's not really important. The main part here is just that you should really read the entire definition.
But do I lose the debate because of it?
No, you don't.
All right, cool. Let's move on. Going into your first labor section, how's paper made?
How is paper made? Paper is made from trees.
All right, where's the
Or
biggest? Do you
other
know where the biggest producer of paper is from?
I don't think I know. Where is it?
Okay, I'm gonna ask you another question. Do you think when we cut down trees for paper, it causes things like deforestation and environmental, problems?
Of course, but there are ethical.
Where do you think environmental problems and deforestation mainly affects? Do you think it's places like the United States, or do you think it's other developing countries?
Of course, it affects places with forests.
Okay, that wasn't the question. Do you think it affects countries like the United States, or do you think it affects more developing countries?
Countries with a majority population of trees, like a lot of trees.
Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about this. Do you think liking something better means? Do you think liking something implies that it's better?
Yes.
Okay, cool. We're gonna start with the opponent, my case, and then we're gonna move on to my opponent's case. 3-minute speech. Am I muted? No, I'm not muted. I'm sorry. Okay. Anybody not ready? All right. Time starts now. I want to first start with my definition of better. My opponent says that we have to define better as overall, but I don't think this is true. I think we should define better as which one is more accessible, because you can't have an overall definition of better if your overall definition of better marginalizes other types of people because they don't have the same equitable access to evaluate, the other forms of an overall better. I think if you want to determine what is better, you need to find out what is more easily accessible for every single individual, because that allows equitable weighing of what can be better. Moving on to my contention one about people with about ebooks help those with disabilities. My opponent says that because people with disabilities are in the minority, we should instead look to people that are in the majority. And because majority of people like ebooks better, or like regular books better, it's better than ebooks. I think this is fundamentally flawed and really ignores a problem that disabled peoples really have in the around the world. The fact that we have to look to a majority people liking it better than the minority people liking it better justifies things like inherent oppression or like internalized ableism that happens in today's society, where we don't really like listen to their issues because we want to do things for a common good. No. We should not be doing this at the point where I already proved through things like the motor difficulties and the things with the print and eyesight difficulties that it's better for those who are disabled. And my opponent does not respond to this, means I am basically winning this point. I'm winning the fact that ebooks help those with disabilities a lot better than regular books do. Do not look to a majority. Don't just look to the majority for solving this. Look to the fact that people who are disabled have inequitable access. Let's move on. I don't really need to defend this text-to-speech thing because I've already proven it helps with people with disabilities. So I guess we can defer her definition on it, but I won't defend the audio. I won't defend the audiobook part. So just look to the part where I talk about motor capabilities and the one that comes after it with the magnifying text, because I've already proven it already helps us with disabilities. Next, let's talk about the how it's cheaper in the long run. My opponent says that you can resell, but the point where even if you resell, if you keep buying resell books, it'll still be significantly cheaper. I give a Pew Research Center, which is actual data. She looks as an isolated scenario of the most popular book franchise. Actually, take an average aggregate of the $5 to $10 from an actual study that shows it's $5 to $10 cheaper, which basically is $5 to $10, which is still shows that it's $5 to $10 cheaper, which means you can still defer on the fact that it's cheaper in the long run to use things like an ebook. Let's move on. They say that forced labor happens. Forced labor still happens in other countries. The largest production of paper is the largest country that produces paper is China. China also allows a lot of forced labor laws. Secondly, China, Thailand, India, those are places that have mass deforestation for the production of paper. Those are still developing countries that still hurt those people in those countries. If we're going to talk about marginalized people in other countries, paper is even worse because it still forces labor in those places. Next, it talks about writers and sizable losses. They still get money. If anything, the people who write the most, the people who are the most popular writers are the only ones that can make money as a writer. And you, she says, implies better. Refer to the part where we should look to the people that have inequitable access rather than the majority. Thank you.
Okay. How long is this next one? It's 5 minutes, right?
I forgot. Hold up. Let's check the notes I have.
It is 5.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Sorry, Amy, I totally forgot.
Oh, it's all right. I forget sometimes too. I'm gonna start on neg case, and I'm gonna move through that, and then I'm gonna move through app case. But I'll start with topic case. Okay, and I'll start now. So basically, we agree on the definition, so we don't really have to talk about this anymore. And when you're saying that you have to weigh on like which one is more accessible, this is not really a point. You're basically just trying to get rid of all the ground for the negation on this debate. You're trying to make a definition out of thin air. You gave an actual definition of better, and then you choose not to use it and just come up with a new definition out of thin air. This is basically only making it so that you can weigh your contentions and trying to talk negation out of having any points in this debate. You can still weigh your contention under the general definition of better. That's what I'm telling the judges to do, to weigh all of the contentions and see which one is more impactful in the debate. You can't only weigh it on accessibility, because better is simply not defined as more accessible. Better is defined as more advantageous or effective. Moving on to the first negation contention, which is regarding forced labor. You said here that China produces paper in India. I'm going to fundamentally China and India produce paper, and this is still using forced labor. I'm going to fundamentally disagree with this on a cultural level. As a Chinese person, paper in China is actually an art, and the majority of people who make paper in China are using it as an art form. And paper is one of the 3 main inventions that ancient China came up with, and so this is in fact fundamentally wrong. And also, a majority of books that are sold in America are actually made in America, which uses significantly less forced labor. When you talk about electronics, basically every single electronic in the world is using some piece of forced labor, but not every single book. So the impacts here still stand. When you're using more ebooks, you're using more forced labor. You're making forced labor more and more profitable in these countries that are using forced labor. And this is just going to impact the lives of the people that are actually producing these electronic parts. It's simply unfair for you to buy these ebooks for like whatever reason that you're buying these ebooks for, and causing people to have to go through forced labor for their entire lives. Moving on to the second contention, which is regarding writers. You basically said that only the most popular writers can make money. That's not true. That's just not true. Writers that are of like medium level popularity can still make money and still make a living off of being a writer. If this was not true, then we simply wouldn't have any writers, because if you can't make money off of being a writer, then nobody would be able to be a writer. And so the impact here still stands. When you buy an ebook, you're not helping your favorite authors. When you buy an ebook, you're actually causing your author to experience a loss. So if the market shifts completely to being only ebooks are being bought, that means that authors will actually no longer be able to make money, unless you're the most popular author. So it's only if the market actually shifts completely to ebooks that your argumentation becomes true. And so this still impacts here where I'm saying that if you actually want to support your favorite author, you have to buy a paper book. Moving on to the next contention, which is that people just like paper books better. You said this is fundamentally flawed because we should only think about people that have disabilities. I do agree that we have to consider people with disabilities, but we still have to consider the majority and consider the fact that if people like things, that generally means that they believe that they are better. And when 92% of students believe that paper books are better, then you have to vote that paper books are better in this round. And all of the other uniqueness points that I gave about how print books are still the most popular type of book that's being sold, print books outsell ebooks, etc. All that still needs to be flowed through, because you didn't really respond to any of that. And you didn't respond to the point here about how people using ebooks are less likely to recall information and how ebooks cause more eye strain. And so you have to think about those impacts as well as for why people actually prefer paper books. We also talked about how paper books bring you back to a more simple time, and people simply aren't ready to give up that kind of feeling of actually having a paper book in their hands. And that's one of the most important contentions in today's debate. People just like paper books better, and that's why they're better, because people like them better. Moving on to your contentions. Your first contention here is disability. You're saying that I'm justifying internalized discrimination. Honestly, this is not the point. I'm not saying that you're wrong to say that ebooks are better for people with disabilities or motor issues. So if you really can't move your hands to flip a book, yes, you should use an ebook. What I'm saying here is you have to judge this on a matter of magnitude. You're judging this on a matter of magnitude and scale. So when you consider that there is a portion of the population that should prefer ebooks, that doesn't make ebooks better. Ebooks are worse for the majority of the population, and that's what you have to consider when judging today's debate. It is, in fact, difficult to think about the definition of better and think about which thing you should think about the most. But what I'm giving you here is actual statistics of the majority of people prefer physical books, and that's what you have to think about. We dropped the audiobook thing, so we don't really have to talk about that. Let's talk about cheaper on the long run. you said that you gave this number that on average $5 to $10. You say $5 to $10 to buy an ebook instead of a physical book, and so it's still cheaper in the long run. The problem here is that I'm not. You said that I only gave one example. That's not really the problem. I'm giving a legal example. When you buy an ebook, you don't own that book. This completely destroys the resale market, and it's simply logically found to say that on the resale market, that when you buy books from people who already own the books instead of from a publisher, you're saving money. This simply is unable to exist on an ebook level because you legally do not own that book and you do not have the right to resell. Okay, so when we talk about the most important impacts on today's debate, I think that the most important thing to consider, especially if you're considering people who are disadvantaged, you have to consider the people who are participating in forced labor in these countries and creating these electronic parts. These are the people that are most disadvantaged that we're talking about in this round. And so that's the biggest impact that I feel like you have to consider today. But I think it's also important to consider the issue of writers. Because if you don't have writers, then you just don't have books at all. And if you move on to a completely ebook market, then you're just not going to have writers writing books, because they're not going to be able to make money off of these books. And so then you just don't have any books at all. And so then what are we even arguing about? This is why print books are better, because you have to buy physical books if you even want to have books in your life at all. You can also talk about this on a level of being disadvantaged, even if you agree with the definition.
I think that was time.
Oh, I had 10 seconds, but basically writers that are low income will be not able to write books because they can't make money. Thank you. It's on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, 3-minute speech. The order is going to be, oh my God, I literally just lost my train of thought. 3-minute speech, the order is going to be the definition of better. Then I'm going to go to the opponent's case, my case, reasons why I should win the round. Anybody not ready? All right, time starts. Now, first, let's talk about the definition of better. She says that she basically agrees with my definition, saying better is which one's more advantageous or effective. But at the point where advantageous and effective, it is not advantageous or effective for those with disabilities and those in marginalized communities through economics, then you can't reasonably weigh that it is better because it's not accessible to every single individual at a standpoint to actually evaluate what is better. Which is why, through the definition of advantageous or effective, we should evaluate accessibility, because if it is more accessible, then it is more advantageous for every single individual. Therefore, it's more effective for every single individual, which is why we should do so. Let's start. I'm going to first start on their third point of how they said people who like it should basically, people who said that because they like paperback better, that it should basically be better. They said that they're still conscious of the minority, but the fact that the majority like it better means it should be better. I think that's fundamentally terrible. Of course, the majority will think it's better because they stand from a standpoint of privilege and power. A town with a 90% white population would probably say they like their town better than the 10% of the black population, probably marginalized in that town. Literally the same thing could apply. The 10% of people who are disabled probably freaking hate using paper books because they don't have the same access to those same types of books. Shouldn't be a matter of which one you like better, but which one does better. And I think ebooks do better. Let's talk about the point of forced labor. She says that China is not the first labor market, even is not it's not the top for paper. It's not the top for forced labor on paper production. Search up which country is which country produces the most amount of paper. It's literally going to be China. They invented paper too. They're probably going to be the one that does it more. And I even talked about countries like India and Thailand, when it also has higher paper production population. It causes environmental destruction because you're cutting down trees in that area for those books, for things like paper, which marginalizes more communities in those spaces and hurts more developing countries because they're going to be producing more paper, which causes things like deforestation, which hurts the environmental structure of these developing countries. Let's talk about writers. They say that they're able to.
Sorry. This rhetoric on environmental destruction in Thailand and India is a new argument.
IPDA doesn't really do points of order.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry, I'm going to continue. Sorry, I kept time going. Does anybody remember what time I have left?
1:06.
All right, thank you. I'm going to real quick discuss that. I did talk about deforestation in developing countries in my last speech. Pretty clear point I made about it. I even brought up India and Thailand as places. But keep going. On the part that says that writers have sizable losses and that they're not able to make a livable wage. Again, more so a livable wage is going to be maintained and going to be strongly maintained for a longer period of time by those who, make the most money off of writing because they're the most popular. Even people that have, people like freelance writers, middle-based writers, they're probably using online resources, but whatever. Let's move on. Onto my case. My opponent doesn't respond. My opponent basically fundamentally concedes the fact that it hurts people who are disabled because they're not having equitable access to books, which this means this means that there's lack of accessibility on that point. And per my definition, which my opponent doesn't really do well to respond to, it is more accessible and more effective to be voting F because we actually count for disabled people with my point about disabilities. Finally, they say it is cheap. I actually have statistical evidence on why it's cheaper in the long run, whereas my opponent just fundamentally like breaks down like, again, like it's still an isolated scenario about Harry Potter books that you resell. If you want newer books because you need the newer books for things like textbooks, like lower edition books, easier to buy them online. Thank you. Vote affirmative.
Thank you for debating with me. You were really
Yep.
good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you both very much. Tab told me that we are supposed to disclose at the end of the round, so the three of us will need to take a couple of minutes. But once we all have entered and finalized our ballots online, if you could just let me know that as a judge you're ready in the chat, then we'll share the way that we voted and let y'all get on to the next thing.
Oh my God. I keep forgetting I'm entered in like other events.
All right, I'll see you guys then.
Oh, wait. Is there like disclosure? Right? Oh, Amy, I totally thought you were like leaving. Sorry.
Just to be clear, so we're just filling out the ballot, and then and then before everyone leaves, then we'll just present what we voted on.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, great. Do we have both debaters here?
I'm here. Yep.
All right, excellent. So all three of us have submitted our ballots. I think we should keep our feedback brief because I know our round got started a little bit later than the others. But Victoria, do you want to start off by sharing your vote?
Yes, so my vote went to the AF, and my reasoning behind that very briefly was I believe that the opening statements or opening arguments, made originally were maintained to the end of the debate. Specifically, I was looking for more evidence and source material to combat them.
Thank you. And Clayton?
I felt that, yeah, I sided with the AF on this one, just because I felt that the definition that was set forth was well supported and ultimately defended to the end, but that those were overall, like, just net benefits wise, I just felt like more people benefited from one versus the other. And I don't know if the NAIG was able to necessarily dismantle that, just in the sense that everyone could, it seems like, could do the ebook thing versus only a specific group can do the print thing. But those are my reasons.
All right, thank you. And my vote also went for the affirmative. I think that the negative was probably right to bring up the definition and argue for a broader interpretation of what better means. So I do think that the affirmative did a good job and provided some warranted rationale as to why better kind of must focus on accessibility, but I didn't really vote on the definition. I do think that the arguments presented on the affirmative's first contention about disabilities and access was one that the affirmative kind of won. And the contention about cost, I do think that you make a great point about reselling, but for me, that kind of ends up then that contention being a wash where there's some cost problems on both sides. And so that didn't go strongly in favor of either the affirmative or negative. Then the argument on forced labor, I really thought that this was going to kind of win you the debate on the negative, because I think that that's an excellent piece of argumentation to present. But then when I did weigh that against some of the arguments about deforestation, that mitigated some of the impact presented, even though it's focusing perhaps more on the environment as opposed to labor. It again posed kind of problems on both sides. So again, it wasn't as big of an argument. But you both did an excellent job. Congratulations again. It was a real pleasure to be able to see this round. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you guys for judging us.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Amy. See y'all soon or whenever.
Bye bye.